to stand on the established protocols. This session will be discussing spotlight on brutality, abuse of office, and harassment of lawyers by security agencies. Brutality, abuse of office, and harassment of innocent Nigerians by security agencies is a perennial problem bedeviling Nigeria. You will all agree with me that lawyers are no exception to this peril. This session will be examining the rising spate of cases of harassment of lawyers by security agents, identify remote and immediate causes, and provide solutions. This session will also evaluate the impact and efforts put in place by the current and successive Nigerian Bar Association administrations to tackle these means and make recommendations on strategic changes where necessary. To discuss this session, I'll be calling on our moderator, Mr. Alex Moker. You're welcome, sir. Also, I'll be calling on our panelists. In no particular order, please make welcome the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Simeon Asabanlog. He is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He is the first serving police officer to be conferred with the prestigious rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria on his first application. He is currently serving as the head of the Nigerian Police Force Chambers, Legal Department, Force Headquarters, Abuja. He has handled several cases and secured conviction of over 200 cases on several crimes and defended them at both the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He is an ardent crusader of justice, rule of law, and order, as well as due process. You're welcome, sir. Please make welcome Mr. Oladotun Thompson. He is an entertainment lawyer. He's also well experienced in intellectual property law and litigation. He currently established his law firm, Ethnes Legal Practice. You're welcome, sir. Please make welcome Mrs. Choma Onucheya Ukor. She is a legal practitioner, a mediator, an arbitrator, a gender rights advocate. She is the principal legal consultant of Zelt Legal Consults. She has built her expertise in family law, combating sexual and gender-based abuse and violence. She is active in promoting enforcement of violence against persons prohibition, VAPP, and she established a police duty solicitor scheme, PDSS unit, for the NBA Abuja branch during her tenure as the vice chairman of Human Rights Committee. You're welcome, ma. Please make welcome Mr. Fola Othowore. He is the managing director of the Security Trust Fund. You're welcome, sir. Mr. Moderator, sir, this session will run only for 1 hour. Each panelist has 10 minutes to discuss, and thereafter there will be questions and answers. Thank you very much. Please make welcome your panelists.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Coordinator. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Time is fast spent, so we will try and be business-like with this session. I would say that probably the reason why I was asked to moderate this session is not because I'm an expert on brutality or its causes or solutions. It's on account of my recent service to the bar as alternate chairman of the NBA Security Agencies Relations Committee, which wound up its activities just about a month ago, and we sent in our final report. Now, as you know, that committee was set up in December last year. Okay, and of course, the whole idea of the committee was to stamp out the harassment of legal practitioners by security agencies across the country, which prior to now had become almost endemic. The committee was chaired by Joe Kiari Gadzama, OFR, MFR, SAN, and we had 14 members of the committee. In the few months of its service, the committee was able to intervene and resolve no less than 15 cases of our colleagues who were harassed by security agencies in the discharge of their functions as lawyers. Now, having given that introduction, I'm going to be inviting members of the panel to speak to you on their peculiar perspective on this topic. And I'm going to start with Mr. Oladotu Thompson. Now, you have heard a brief introduction about him. He is a victim of police brutality, and he will be speaking from the perspective of his personal experience of this sad topic. Mr. Thompson, please.
Okay. Thank you, moderator. When I got the invite to speak at this year's conference, I was met with mixed feelings. You know, feelings of if this opportunity is going to exhaustively and finally bring me the closure I've always wanted all these years, and or perchance it's going to open already healed wounds of the past. But then again, I am here, and I would like to share my personal experience of how the whole incidents of about 4 years ago, how it impacted my life, how it changed my career, and has precipitated a strong desire to transit boldly from the experience. Okay. Well, but before I go on, I would like to let you know that I'm happy to be here. I'm much elated to be here today, and I'm grateful to the administration of the Olumide Akpata for inviting me to, share my experience about my police brutality story. And also I'll be speaking about other people's experiences in the course of this session. So to start with, it started on the 21st day of February in 2018. One very horrible morning, I was living in Niger. I live in Niger. So I had this business to close for a client in Lekki Phase 1, and also an appointment for an interview, a job interview. So I left Aja, and I boarded the bus going to Lekki. Then there came this man, cladded in his police uniform, and he came to where I was sitting, because in the bus there were a lot of other seats. I was like I sat just right behind the driver, the second row. It's like a 18-passenger bus. So this man came, he was cladded in his uniform, and he came to where I was sitting, because I sat very close to the window. And he said I should vacate my seat for him so that he could sit. And me, perplexed, I was like, okay, there are other seats for you to sit. You could sit there, but politely I declined. Instead of this man to be very calm with me, he resulted into violence. What could have ended up as a peaceful encounter, ended up as a slapping marathon. He beat me. I was beaten black and blue. To say the least, it was the most horrifying experience I had ever got in my entire life. I was left there on the road. It pushed me out of the moving vehicle. I landed on the express. Then there was a runover from the tire of the bus over my leg, and eventually I got my left leg fractured. I was left at the mercy of the spectators that day. It was a very embarrassing, humiliating, disgraceful, to say the least. Well, I feel I've been able to heal because I wouldn't be able to fight back a police officer. I respect that uniform too much. To exacerbate matters, I was subjected to the ugly sneers and whispers, made a laughing stock in the whole public glare. You may not be able to fathom how much I felt that day, but I know you are human too. And after this whole scenario, I was taken to the hospital by passers-by, and I'm grateful for the intervention of the Nigerian Bar Association, Lagos branch, the administration of Chukwuazom in 2018. They really did supported me. They did support me. And there were litigations coming up which I couldn't even keep up with because I had to deal with the trauma. I was swallowed in situational depression. Like I felt my life flashed before my eyes. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson.
I felt my life flash before my eyes. I could have died. Maybe that day I would have just been celebrated or honored to a candlelight event if I hadn't lost my life. Then I thought for once that if this could happen to me, it is happening to several other lawyers out there. Or should I tell you about Goodness Ibanga on the 27th of January 2020 in Enugu? How she was brutally assaulted. For what reason? Because she failed to negotiate a settlement for a rape victim. She was brutalized, beaten to pulp, to the point that she lost consciousness. Or should I tell you about the story of gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I think the attitudinal predisposition of the security agencies to be disposed to abuse and oppression, it calls for so much concern. And if this is not addressed in a no distant time, I do not see the pride that we will begin. I do not see the pride we are going to be flaunting.
Mr. Thompson, thank you
in
very
this
much.
progression.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, but
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. I was sorry about that. Thank you. Now, Mr. Thompson has painted a very graphic picture of what this session is about. Brutality, harassment. I'm sure some of you would be wondering, should he have turned the other cheek? Should he have played mute and been meek? Pause there. I'm going to invite DCP Simon Lowe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He is in a vantage position to tell us, to paint a historical picture and tell us how we as a people have come to the point at which Mr. Thompson found himself on that day. Hello, please.
Thank you very much, the moderator. The issue of brutality as painted by my learned friend here did not just start today. It starts from the pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial, and even after independence. We are aware and we know that before the coming of the colonialists, we have the security architecture put in place by traditional rulers that were used for the enforcement of rules and regulations. However, when the colonialists came and saw that there was resistance because they came purposely to dominate, take over our political and economic advantages, they saw that there is resistance. So they now put in place the security system or the security architecture which we have today as the modern day security agencies. The police, the army, the SSS, the EFCC, all are offshoot of colonial heritage. And the nature of training given by these security agencies, by the colonialists, was brutalism. Brutalism in the sense that it was aimed at subduing the people, dominating them to take control of all our resources. So the training given to the security agencies is what has metamorphosed into what we have today. So it's not a new thing. So it has been there. And so many people has fallen victims. After independence, or during the struggle for independence, we have senior lawyers like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo. They were senior lawyers, and some nationalists like Inahoro. They were the people who started the struggle for independence. So they were also harassed, but they were steadfast and they continued until we got independent. And because of the training given by these security forces, by the colonialists, even after independence, it continued. That is why we had several cases of coups and counter-coups, because they feel to subdue the people, you have to use force. That is why we have all those cases of coup and counter-coup. And even when we, attend the democratic session as we are today now, that has continued, because that mentality that was imbued in the people by the colonialists has remained there. So that's why we have so many cases of abuse of power, harassment, because that is the nature of training that was given. So many years, over 60 years after independence, we have not, developed a curriculum or training that is akin to our own setting. We are still, building on the training given by the colonialists. You know, I will give you an example. You see, we were in Malawi last week. So I saw that their own setting of policing system is completely different from that of Nigeria. So I was speaking with one of the senior officers there. Why is it that the whole of this time we don't have security forces on the road? There's no, brutality. So, what he told me that their presidents, President Bandi, Dr. Bandi, when he came to power, that's the first one that immediately after their independence in 1964, when he came to power, he changed the training curriculum of their security forces, which was brutal in nature, to civil in nature. That is why they have that issue. You will see the whole of the capital of Malawi. They don't have street light. There's no policeman on the road. You will not even see anybody with a gun. So the issue of brutality is completely absent. So if we must change, if we actually want to attend or, curb all these issues or incidences of brutality by security agencies, we must overhaul completely our training curriculum. If you go to our training institutions now, if you see the psychology that is being built into those people who are coming up to come and enforce the law, you discover that it is a very hard and negative psychology. That is why when they come out from training, they continue, because that is what they have been training. The military, their training is that when you go out, you have to kill. Without knowing that we are in a civil and democratic setting, they still continue with that. I will give a practical example of cases of brutality and actions taken by most of these authorities. I will start with the Nigerian police. The Nigerian police, the most visible security agencies, being the primary law enforcement agent in Nigeria. However, when it comes to issues of lawyers, judges, the Nigerian police is always careful. That is why you see that there are little or limited number of cases of brutality involving lawyers. The one painted by this our learned friend is an exception. But when it comes to issues of lawyers, the Nigerian police, in fact, is always very careful. But other security agencies like the SSS, like the Army, the EFCC, you can see cases of harassment of judges between 2015 and 2022. You can count the number of judges that were arrested, harassed, some charged to court, and discharged on flimsy charges. One of the typical cases is the case of the former, that's our retired Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Mary Udidi. Her house was invaded, on flimsy excuses of executing a search warrant. Those are abuses. But the leadership, the present leadership of the police now has put in place measures to deal with all cases of abuse of power. Recently, you will see those inspector from the 7PMF was involved in brutality. And you discover that within 1 week of that incident being reported and even shown on television, that officer was tried and then he was found guilty and dismissed. There was another incident in Cross River where a constable was found flogging a member of the public with machete. That also was arrested, tried, and dismissed. There was another incident also in Lagos here where one police officer from the Dauphin Division, one corporal, Okwemi, was also involved in act of brutality. He was also arrested and dismissed. So you discover that the leadership of the police now, is aimed or is putting in place measures to ensure that they bequeath to the Nigerian people a police that is civil in nature, that abide by the rule of law. So most of these cases that you will be hearing are cases that were in the past, but you will not see any of these cases. We will also have cases, brutality by the army. You will remember 3 policemen and 2 civilians were killed in Taraba in 2019. Nothing up to date have been done by the military. Those personnel who were involved in those acts were not punished.
Thank you, sir.
They were not disciplined.
Thank you, sir.
Similarly, you have cases of recent attack of policemen by the Ojo cantonment, military cantonment. That one is also hanging there. You also see on Friday last week, some army officers attacked an Islamic clinic. You know, that one is hanging there, nothing has been done. So we have several causes.
Thank you very much.
We have several causes that account for all those things. And I will just highlight just few of them. Some of these causes, one, is lack of accountability.
Sir,
There's lack of accountability on the part of the security forces.
Sir, thank you.
So
We'll come back to that. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I must inform the audience that DCP Simon Law essay paper, a 20-page paper, which traces the history of brutality and harassment by security agencies, and it's a rich paper. The paper will be made available by the organizers, okay? But it's interesting. I hear him say that the force is a subjugation force that is used to a culture or psychology of brutality and harassment. And that is his central thesis. Now, I must turn to my friend Chioma. You heard her rich introduction. She's the immediate past chairperson of the NBA Abuja branch. She was vice chairman of the branch. And as you know, under the NBA constitution and the branch bylaws, the vice chairman is primarily charged with attending to cases of human rights abuse, particularly interventions on behalf of our colleagues who have infractions or engagements with law enforcement. So she had to intervene severally in incidents of the nature that we have heard about. So we'd like to hear her perspective on this topic for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Please permit me to rest on the protocols that have been established for the session. Okay, I would like to intervene from 3 perspectives. So the first will be what I call the endemic culture of impunity and violence which permeates the society. And by the nature of this culture, you cannot possibly expect that if any of us think it's okay, or if anybody at all thinks it's okay to wield power because he or she perceives he's superior to another and just wield that power as he wills or as she wills, you cannot expect that person to be any different when he or she assumes an office, a status. So we see that, for example, when we talk about violence against women being the weaker of the gender, or violence against children, a lot of people do not quite empathize with those situations. But the truth is that once violence, impunity, or any sense of superiority is tolerated or permitted for one person, the chances that that person then extends it to any other toga or any other designation he or she wears is of course there. And being that the security agents that we have are products of our society as we have, naturally follows that the culture which we tolerate and permit then extends into their operations when they should ordinarily not even conduct themselves in that manner. That's on one hand. Then on the other hand is what I'll call, like a conflict or a dilemma of perception of identity. So if we look at the Nigerian police force, for example, ordinarily, it should be, it should be a primary understanding that this is a civilian outfit. But sadly, that doesn't appear to be the way they perceive themselves. And that also doesn't appear to be the way some of us perceive them by the impetus we give them and the kind of tasks we ask them to execute and in the kind of things we suggest to them. So because they do not quite believe that they are civilians, they feel that they are superior to the rest of us in the society, and they feel that just by the essence of that superiority, they can go ahead and just treat people however they choose. By the account that was shared with us by our colleague, you can see that that wasn't even quite a case of like a lawyer brutality in that sense, because that brutality happened against him regardless him not being in that place at that moment as a lawyer. So which means it's something that could have happened to any other citizen of the country or any other person. And that stems from a sense of superiority, because otherwise there'll be no reason why an officer would assume that it should be natural that somebody would concede a seat to him just because he's an officer. So I think that is part of the problem that gives rise to the spate of brutality and harassment that we see. And then, of course, for the other members of the force, those in the military, yes, because they are military, they perceive themselves to also be superior to the rest of us civilians. And they believe that they are demigods and we should naturally, cower at the sight of them. So they perceive maybe even an expression of opinion. A disagreement is perceived as an affront. And that shouldn't be, because if they realize that they are under duty to protect, then they cannot turn around to hound or to harm those who they are supposed to be protecting. Then the last, which may sound a bit controversial, is a twin sabotage, a self-sabotage, which I see that many of us are guilty of. So what do I mean by that? Whenever we talk about some of these infractions, some of them are because in the manner of conducting our affairs as legal practitioners, we sometimes do not know where to draw the line. And when we are unable to draw the line to ensure that we do not step outside the bounds of legality, when we are desperate to ensure that we retain the patronage of our clients, when we are willing to do any and everything in the pursuit of, gaining clientele, chances are that will be in infraction of the law. And once we find ourselves in that delicate line, the opportunity for them, those of the security agencies, whichever they are, the opportunity for them to leverage on that and deal with us is quite high. I don't know why that is, but though they are supposed to be our friends, there is some sort of perception of us as those people who try to deprive them of unfettered rights to do their dealings however they want to do it. And because they already perceive us as on the other side, whenever a lawyer steps forward in any matter in the conduct of his brief as a legal practitioner, they already think you're going to put the spanners in the works for them. And because of that perception, there is some sort of adversarial relationship. And if a lawyer is not careful to conduct himself or herself as is befitting of his status as a lawyer, in due deference to the rule of law and legality, you then create opportunity for them to leverage on a slip and possibly treat the lawyer lesser than he or she deserves to be treated. I saw a lot of that happen in some of the cases I intervened in, because when you hear some of what our colleagues pass through, you are already infuriated because you wonder who would dare. But when you go to investigate, sometimes you are left almost embarrassed, because you realize that our colleague must have done something that gave impetus to whoever it is, whether police or otherwise, that, did whatever they did. And on the other side of it, it is not only in the manner we conduct ourselves when handling briefs for clients. You also see that, as with the saying we have in my side of the country, I'm Igbo, and then we say it is, oke no n'ụlọ, gwara nke nọ n'ezi, na ọbịa n'azụ nọ na ngega, which simply means that it is the rat in the home that tells the rat in the bush to come have a party, that there is enough fish by the fireplace. So what happens is that in the desperation of some of us to show might or to show capacity, we give the security agencies tips on how to maneuver the law, because the truth is, for every rule, for every procedure, for every law, if you study it well enough, you may find loopholes on which you can manipulate things. And because we keep teaching them those to serve our interest at a given time, whether as lawyers in private practice or even as lawyers who are in these establishments, we then embolden them to extend it to other colleagues of ours in situations where they find opportunity to do that. So I think that overall, the primary reasons why this happened, which of course is no justification at all, is the reasons I have mentioned, and in brief, they simply are what I call the culture of impunity and violence, which thrives in a society, then the dilemma of identity, perception of identity by the security agencies, and then the self-sabotage, which we inflict on ourselves, though sometimes inadvertently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So you put it down to a culture of impunity and violence, which you believe is innate in all of us. Thank you. I'm going to be calling somebody I hold in very high esteem. For those of you who have practiced in Lagos, you would remember Mr. Fola Otowori as one of our favorite DPPs in the Lagos State Ministry of Justice. You would more recently remember him when he headed the Lagos State Security Trust Fund, which unarguably brought a number of innovations to policing, crime control, and general security in Lagos State. I particularly remember him as a gifted writer. He published a book many years ago called The Diary of Mr. Michael, a novel about Nigeria. And he has some interesting insights about Nigeria, generally, policing, and other things. So I'm going to be asking him to lend or share his thoughts on this topic, particularly from the perspective of how did we get here? Mr. Towari, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Well, I know the topic is about brutality towards lawyers by security agencies. But their brutality spreads beyond lawyers. And I think lawyers are just collateral damage and have a platform to speak. It's not working. Have a platform to speak to this issue. My view is that there are three institutions that are very, very difficult to reform. The first is the civil service. And I was part of that, and I know how they resist change. The second is the judiciary. because they are just traditional. And the third is the police. Anywhere in the world, even in America, the great democracy, they are still fighting to reform the police, to stop the police from killing black people, to stop the police from arresting people for no cause. So there's nothing unique about Nigeria. The question is, what drives reform? Who are the agencies that are supposed to drive reform? Because be assured, the police will not reform themselves. The problem with Nigeria and the Nigerian police is that we have an extremely lazy executive that merely talks the talk but does no work. The police are primarily accountable to the people, but in reality, they are accountable to the executive. And if the executive makes no effort to change their philosophy, their thinking, and to improve their conditions of service, we'll continue to have a brutal police that will brutalize people. Again, what exactly, distinguished colleagues, is the work of the National Assembly that has committees? They have the Committee on Police, they have Committee on Security, etc. But in 23 years, have they been able to impose any changes at all on the police or improve their condition? Yes, they have passed a new police act. I believe it's a police act. And they've also passed Police Trust Fund Act. But none of these have really been operationalized. So I think our job, I think, as lawyers, using the MBA as a platform, is to ask hard questions of the executive and the National Assembly as to why they have not done more than they should to improve the police, which in my view, after the courts, is the most important civil institution in Nigeria. So for now, that's what I have to observe.
Thank you very much. We've taken the initial perspectives of the panelists. We would like to interrogate them a little more to get their thoughts on this knotty topic. And I'm going to be handing the mic back first to Mr. Towori. He says the executive is in charge and is to blame. Happily, he led the Lagos State Security Trust Fund, which pumped in quite a lot of money into equipping, resourcing the police in Lagos State. And we did see some improvement. There was a reduction in crime rate at a point. There seemed to have been improved security. Sir, did that, in your view, in your experience, translate to a reduction in, not in the crime rate? We're concerned here with the incidents of harassment of lawyers by the police, by the better equipped policemen in Lagos State under your watch.
Hello. Only to a certain degree. As you know, states are not the controlling entity over the police. Indeed, the federal government has sucked the states dry, literally, to keep the police operational because they hardly fulfill their budgetary or other obligations. But to the extent that we could influence behavior, the focus of the trust fund was mainly the RRS. So I say an operational element of the force came under our influence. And we were able, because we were the provisioners, not just of equipment, but also of allowances, etc., which made life, we were able to some degree to demand of them a certain level of courtesy and decorum when dealing with the public. Indeed, there's a recent story where an ASP in the RRS was slapped by a member of the public. And you would have expected as Olokpa, he would, but he calmed himself because he had been within that rubric of control. So I think that we must improve the conditions of service of our policemen. Their conditions of service are horrendous. Hardly any of us in this room would work for the police, particularly in the rank and file. I think there is a huge gap between officers like the DSP. Once you get to that level, you're fine. But the rank and file are really in dreadful circumstances. So don't be surprised if, they are easily, agitated when you cross them. So I think, and that's why I say the executive has not done its work. We spend money on all manner of ridiculous things, but we need the police. And I think because the politicians use the police in many circumstances to advance their agenda, they're not really interested in making them a modern professional force. They prefer them as they are, always in need, always, So those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now, I'm going to go back to Mr. Thompson. The Bible says, turn the other cheek. The same Bible says, a soft word turneth away wrath. Some people have opined that you don't argue with the man with a gun. And the feeling is that when it comes to the lawyer, police, or security agency officer interaction, perhaps there would be less friction if lawyers comport themselves with a certain level of meekness or humility. What is your view? Do you think the incident you had would have been avoided if you had simply given up your seat and, gone about? Is that a solution you want to put forward? Do you reckon that maybe the ego that we have as lawyers may be partly to blame for the kind of reaction we often get from law enforcement?
Well, thank you very much. Well, I believe that scientifically, they say to every action there is equal and opposite reaction. It's one of the Newton's law of motion. I believe that if a police officer or a security... Okay, I believe that if a police officer or security agency conducts himself in a respectable manner, respect, they say, is reciprocal. It would be given to him. I would extend the respect that I would have for that uniform on his neck, that he had on. I respected the uniform, not the personality. And I think it still boils down to the issue of the training the police officers go through. I think there has to be a remodeling of the curriculum of the police training college. They need to go through rigorous standard practices, best standard practices in recruitment process, like taking personality tests, taking the course in emotional intelligence. All these things could be considered first before you give an appointment to a police officer, a go-within police officer. I think you would agree with me that if this kind of measures are put in place, no police officer who has gone through an emotional intelligence course would comport himself and be engaging in belligerent banters with the public. I think it boils down more to training and retraining, both training and retraining of the police officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. DCP, I'm going to come back to you. I know you've done extensive research in this area. You have vast experience. And I'm going to ask you to speak to us a little more, identifying the causes of harassment and abuse of office by officers.
Thank you, the moderator. You see, the police will have is determined by the society. The society in the sense that the government, if the executive actually want to have a police that is civil, friendly, effective, efficient, they can do that. They can do that by, one, improving the condition of service, not just the police, all the security agencies. A person who operates in a very poor environment, it will affect his psychology. So, the stress of the job as a result of poor environment can also affect the psychology of the person performing the job, especially security agencies. For instance, you will see policemen posted on the road or sent for operations for months. Their salaries or allowances are not paid. Their sleeping or their accommodation is not taken care of. So how do you think they will react? The solution is that the government must be ready to build a police that is friendly, civil, efficient, and to perform effectively. So some of the causes of this ineffectiveness and brutality, one, there's lack of accountability. We don't have accountability. There's no mandatory accountability on the part of law enforcement agencies generally. So when their members erred, they are not compulsorily held accountable. That is why you have so many cases of brutality, because people are not held accountable. And another is the stress of the job. The stress of the job, as I said, when you are saddled with so much responsibility, with little resources to account for, you cannot do your best. And another is even the inaction from members of the public who fall victims. Most members of the public who fall victim of some of this brutality, they just go without any remedy because they feel that even if they go to court, the process is cumbersome and financially, they don't have the wherewithal to pursue it. So some of them just, go that. So there's inaction and from the members of the public. And sadly, the MBA, that is lawyers who are lawyers, also are guilty of that. It is the responsibility of lawyers to fight for whatever cause to a standstill, to say enough is enough. So if the MBA stand firm to fight brutality and harassment and said enough is enough, I don't think that will continue. You can fight it by, proposing a law that make it mandatory for all security agencies to be accountable for their excesses. As we have now, there's no any law, particular law, holding all security agencies accountable. So it's the responsibility of MBA as a body to speak loud, and not just loud, bold, and not just bold, to us for the impact to be felt, their might to be felt. So they can propose a law in that aspect.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We will move swiftly now. And I'm going to ask you, Madam Chioma, we have heard from DCP, the MBA has a role to play. He has also told us that the inaction by victims of brutality is contributing. Of course, what he didn't mention is that in the course of his career, he has successfully prosecuted a number of policemen and officers of other agencies who have been charged with harassment or assault on members of the public, including lawyers. I think he deserves a round of applause for that. Thank you. Now, Madam Chairman, in your opinion, we're dealing with harassment, abuse of office, assaults on lawyers. In your opinion and from your experience, would you say that it is more expedient for those cases to be taken up and championed by the NBA as an association as opposed to individual actions for legal redress by the lawyer victim of abuse?
Okay, so I'll say that having those forms of actions prosecuted by an august body such as the NBA would, of course, give the cause the kind of amplification needed and set the tone for deterrence as expected. Yes, that is not to say that individual victims cannot do what they can as their rights of seeking redress, but it may not earn as much reaction as it would if it were the NBA championing it. So I totally agree that the NBA as an organization has a lot to do. And not just for when it is infractions against our members, but also in deserving cases against members of the public. Because on the platform of public interest litigation and ensuring that rights of persons are not trampled upon in the enforcement of human rights, NBA owes a duty to take those steps, and that duty should be taken a lot more seriously, because in doing it, we are actually protecting ourselves for the future. With what we see and what has happened to some of our colleagues, it doesn't deserve being said that it can actually happen to anybody. So if we do not immediately set the tone and ensure that our human rights committees are sufficiently empowered to take on those cases on behalf of the bar, and then to also ensure that for each time one person is affected, we realize that it affects the rest of us, then we may not be seeing the end of this, or even a reduction in the spate of it in recent times. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to be coming to the audience. I'm sure that a number of you may have questions and seek to integrate for that. But just before we invite the audience, we've heard that the NBA should champion the cause. Bear in mind that the NBA cannot be the plaintiff in a case for legal redress for assault. It has to be the victim. The best the NBA can do is lend its institutional support by putting together a team to assist the victim in fighting or seeking redress. And that brings me back to Mr. Oladotun Thompson, who we have heard was a victim of police brutality. Sir, did you pursue legal redress? How far did you go with your pursuits? What was the outcome?
Thank you very much. Well, to some extent, as I said earlier, the Lagos NBA branch in 2018 instituted a matter on my behalf. But due to the trauma I was facing then, it was really, really hard for me to keep up. I had to be going to the hospital to get medical reports. They would frustrate me because it was a national orthopedic in Yawa. They would frustrate me. I would be there for hours, for days. I couldn't come up with and I was spending, and like I said, I didn't have a job at that time. I didn't have anything, no means of sustenance. I spent 20,000 naira daily going to the hospital to procure my medical report. So I was unable to do that, and it was really hard for me to. The whole thing just frustrated me, and I just had to abandon it. But I hope in the nearest future, since fundamental rights enforcement procedure is not statute bad, I can always do that in the nearest future and get my redress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we will be coming to you, the audience. Can we agree on the number of questions we will take? Can we get an indication by a show of hands as to those who would like to ask questions? Okay, so can we agree on a number? 1, 2, your hand was not raised. 3, we will take only 2 from this row. So we will take the gentleman in front and we'll take the lady. So you are 4 and the lady behind you is 5. We'll take 6, 7. So that's the number we would be able to accommodate. So please, oh, I'm sorry. We will then take 8. Okay, so just 8 questions. Please, you have a minute. Please come forward, take the mic. Very quickly, your question succinctly. If you want to direct it to a particular panelist, you say so. Starting with number 1. No, who was number 1? Were you number 1? Oh, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great panelists. My name is Adetoyinbo, member MB Akure branch. My question goes to the police chief, a senior colleague, who says that the police you get is a reflection of the society we are. And I want to put it back that, can the police be so shaped to determine the level of what obtains in the society? What obtains in advanced countries, the police in the US, in UK, and other areas of the world? Why has it been so difficult for the Nigerian police force to continue to demonstrate a notorious and negative, legal order? Maintenance of law and order, resorting to always police brutalities all the time. At the same time, our colleagues who are lawyers in the police force, even the OC legas, the way they deal with those of us in private practice, even during the court sessions, when an IPO is given, maybe under examination, whatever is it, the way they frown at us, calling us bloody civilians, no longer relating as lawyers. And I want to say this, sir. Chief OCJ Okosha this morning said a lawyer in Port Harcourt wrote a check on the name of a judge that, look, oh, this is the check of the judgment you gave, judgment debt something. So our society, from legal institutions, processes, brutalities, human rights, even when government are trying to even put on the police trust fund or so, or security trust fund, to support security operations administratively, and to make sure that everything is under control and order. Finally, sir, I want to say that.
Sir, is there a question?
Yes, I directed to him, sir. So my second one.
No,
yes.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yes, is to say that.
No, I'm sorry,
finally, sir. Finally, it's not a question. Generally, sir, at all times we must ensure supremacy of rule of law. Supremacy of rule of law by all concerned, all stakeholders. Let us ensure supremacy of rule of law. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Number 2. Please make it a question and to the point, please. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, distinguished panelists, distinguished colleagues. Now, I heard when somebody talked about training and retraining of the police. And my question is, do you think there's any kind of training and retraining that will stop a policeman or a security man who wants something from you? We all know how these things start. He wants probably money. How can the training, because some of them are not properly remunerated. They want something. how can the training stop them when government has not taken care of them? Secondly, I would say for those who err, they should be fished out, and NBA has a lot of work to do. But also, our colleagues have a lot of work to do on themselves too. By the time, most of the time, we, as lawyers, we have this pride and ego. We carry ourselves with pride. I work in an office. By the time you enter my office with so much pride and ego, yes, what can I do for you? I'll tell you that this is my office. So we must also check ourselves as lawyers, because 30% of the problem also comes from the law. You want to show to them that you are lawyers. They will also tell you that they have some powers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you. No, I'm sorry. Number three is here. I'm sorry.
Good evening, panelists, the chairman, ladies and gentlemen. Recently, I was involved in a situation whereby I was assaulted in the course of doing my duty as a lawyer. Although it wasn't by the police, it was by some immigration officers, but I went to the police station to make a report. I'm addressing my question to the police personnel on the stage, the panelists. I went to the police station to report the immigration officers, and I was told by the policemen I met at the police station that I should go back to the immigration office and then go and meet their controller, that because police cannot go and arrest an immigration officer. So it happened last week. So I want to ask, is there a law? Because the police is the authority I will run to in case my property, my life, or anything is at stake. Then when I get to the police station to report an immigration officer or a custom officer or a military officer, and the police says we have an agreement, we cannot go and arrest ourselves, what do we do about that? Then number two, sir, the police personnel, they were trying to talk about lawyers being egoistic and all sorts. I think we know the law, and we are fighting for justice. And before, as a lawyer, you go to a police station to address a policeman. We are not fools. We went through law school. The fact that you are part of the police system and we are lawyers and you are our colleagues, I know you will have some soft spot for your colleagues, but we should be sincere. Like we are here, we've been here for like 4 days, and I've not seen anybody fighting. If it was bankers or other organizations gathering, you would have seen police coming to arrest for one case or the other. We all went through law school, and we are not disorderly beings. And if we go to the police station, we are not going there to exert any authority. Once a policeman sees a lawyer, he becomes threatened. You say, oh, you don't go call lawyer. Is it because you are a lawyer? Go and wait outside there. It should not be so. We should, because Madam she started her first point, 2 points, very fine. The third point, I have a problem with it because she spoke like a police person. She said, lawyers, we are egoistic. It's not about being egoistic. We all excuse ourselves. We have not quarreled with ourselves since we've been together for like 4 days. We are very disciplined beings. But when we go to the police station, immediately you hear, a policeman hears on the counter that you are a lawyer or an IPO. He is immediately threatened. He starts telling you, sit down here, he wants to rubbish you. And because we have been trained in the way of the law, we have to tell them that no, we are seeking justice. And if you are seeking justice, you cannot come so meekly. So, madam, I am trying to tell you that the rule of law is what should be taught. If you encounter the DPOs, the DCOs, they are different beings from those guys you see at the counter and the IPOs. So most times when we go there, because we do criminal law, we are in that field every day. We have counters.
Madam, I'm sorry. We would need to stop you there, but we get the point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Can we have number 4? Number 4 is the gentleman in front. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The name is Wale Ogunade. I'm from the Ikeja Bar. We come here, or we go, whenever we have any of these conferences, this topic is regular. We talk about police brutality, and so on. In fact, I'm tired. I'm tired because it's something we discuss, and to me, it's something we can deal with. The police is a creation of the Nigerian Constitution and the law. And I think maybe the NBA should take a step on this. Because he's a victim of, our colleague sitting there is a victim yesterday. It may be the victim of, the son, lawyer, a policeman can be the victim too. Because you know your colleagues, they are terrible when they're on the road with a gun. But be that as it may, where I'm going is that we can't continue like this. We come here, we talk it up and talk it up and talk it up. We must take steps, proactive steps, legislation to put an end to this thing. I know institutions like the United Nations are interested in this thing. If you remember, there was a time when police do kill people anyhow, roadblock. They will set up roadblock and people will be killed anyhow. It took the effort of people like us to ensure that we involve the United Nations, and they stopped it. Now it has gone down. And I think the second leg is that we set up a human rights desk in all police stations. And I guess it's still working. And I guess we can still do that. And I'm putting my challenge to the son policeman. I'll be looking at you very well now. I'm engaging you. We'll put you to task that before you leave the police force, there must be a change. You are inside and you represent you as a senior advocate of Nigeria. I guess the first one in the police force. You must use that status to ensure that this thing stops. No apology. I'm going to take you up on this. And I'm throwing a challenge to you personally. So, that is one. I know that the second one, let me just give you my little experience. I'm in Ikeja. I practice mostly in Ikeja apart from other parts of the country. And there was a day I was going to court. And if you know Ikeja very well, the High Court is in front, the police college is in front of the High Court. And I just went inside the police college and said I want to see the commandant. I got there and I told him that, look, we just started democracy. That was around 1999. We just started democratic runs, and I know that definitely you police, you must have a training along that route so that you stop your instrument of brutalization. Because what we know is that yes, you are the Nigerian police, not just police, but police force. So you use force against us. And he said, yes, it's something that can be done. I should go and do a proposal. I did a proposal, and that was the end of it. It never saw the light of the day. So I'll check my system, look for the proposal, and I'm going to forward it to you. And from there, we'll take it up. This is a big challenge to you, and I hope I have the support of the House.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, sir. Number 5 is a lady. Sorry, who was number 5? No, I'm writing them now. Number 5 was... Who was number 5? No, number 5 was somebody behind you. And I thought it was a gentleman. The gentleman. No, please give it to the lady. The lady. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All protocol duly observed. I would like to start my comment by saying that...
Sorry, we cannot continue to take comments.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I have a question. I would like to start by saying that an average policeman you see on the streets of Nigeria is a frustrated man. I do not mean to undermine the position of police officers in Nigeria. However, I would like to state that for a very long time we have been hearing things like the police reform every now and then. And the Leonard Silk on the panel has also stated things like police reform and all of that. But the question I would like to ask today, where are we on this reform? What has been done to ensure that these police officers get better treatment in Nigeria? The truth remains that these police officers are hungry. They are not properly paid. Few days ago, we have some police officers protesting on account of not being paid salary for several months, about 16 months or thereabout. How do we expect these officers to feed? When they see a lawyer on the street, who at times, when they come to the station, they deprive them of the money they are supposed to make from these people who come to report cases or even the suspect before them. Of course, they have every reason to vent their anger on these lawyers. So please, we would like to know what are these things that the police has done to reform the police, to help these officers, especially those junior officers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, sir. I think number 6 is here.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, other panel of judges. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all my colleagues at the bar. My name is Chukwudi Ezechiogbe. I am of the Ikeja bar. I have these questions. The first one is, can the NBA holistically address brutality in all forms by our security agencies, especially the police? For me, I will leave them to answer, but I have actually seen brutality meted out to both lawyers and other members of the citizens by other security agencies. So they are bound, so we shall avert our minds to it. The second one is, I consider it demeaning for police or EFCC officials to demand, as a matter of right, that as a lawyer, you do not enter their offices with your phones. It is not done in other climes. It is ridiculous, and I feel it should be jettisoned. Lastly, I've had to address this in a couple of forums before now, and where is a better forum to talk about it than a place like this? The name, I think, aside the issue of reform that the Leonard Silk on the panel has talked about and one other person here has talked about, I think one of the problems of the Nigerian police as I see it, my dad is a retired police officer, by the way. He was a Republican police at Police College here. He's done retired for a very long time. Even he is appalled and shocked when he sees the current crop of policemen acting, because he will ask them, where did you learn this one from? He will stop his vehicle, wind and come. Who taught you this one? I wasn't taught this. But that's by the way. I think part of the problem for me, which is lastly on my list of questions, is, can the name itself, the Nigerian police force, can it be changed? If you see the police of other countries, it is just Ghana police, America police, Metropolitan police. But our own, that inclusion of force, it gives them a notion that the only way to make people do what they want is through the use of force, which is wrong. Even my little boy, I talk to him and he listens to me. Not to talk of you addressing adults and you feel into exert force. So I think that one.
Thank you, thank you, sir.
Lastly, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. We will need to move to the next person.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, sir. Mr. Chairman, before I ask my question, I would like to adopt the submission of my brother, the former Lagos Trust Fund chairman, who from the very beginning started by saying there are 3 institutions that it would be very difficult for you to reform them. And I think to some extent, I agree with him. I said something needs to be done. And also agree with my sister, Milana Senior, very close to her, who said that one of the fundamental problems of lawyers, particularly the Chatham Bay lawyers, is the egoism, the depression. And you believe me, if your issue is always going to this rank and file without going to the scene, the DPO, DCO, it will end there. And the young boys, somehow, just like what my Lana Senior said, that the issue of police and policing is not just in Nigeria. It's a system, it's embedded. It's a systematic problem. You find it in legal practicing. I have seen number of courts where you go and see lawyers fighting inside court. It has happened in Gombe, injuring themselves. It's an institutional issue that we need to put out together and address it. Not just single out one institution and think that institution is the problem. And you will agree with me, just like his submission, say every day, every time they are killing blacks in America. Is that no brutality? And in as much as...
Sir, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. My question is, why are counsel or legal practitioner always going to a police station with that egoism, thinking I am superfluous, thinking bravado, and that is cause some of our problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I think number 8 is here. Did you get his question? Why are lawyers going to the police station? Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My charge first is to Mr. Thompson. I'm very sorry about your experience, but let me tell you, you need to bring a closure to what has happened to you. And Providence is taking you somewhere so that you can be advocate for those who are brutalized. So just bring a closure to this and move on. But you need to find out who this police officer is and take it up so that you can effectively close this. So thank God that you are alive. Try to be happy about it and move on. Bring a closure to it, and move on. Now, as regards the factors that give rise to this brutality, we can go on. But finally, you will find that all the factors funnel to one point: bad governance. Any serious regime would ensure that they have a good policing system. We have that problem here, and it's not going to go away easily. So my charge to my colleagues is this: you would still find instances of police brutality, but you need to sue. All instances where I've found lawyers suing, you would find this, these erring police officers in a very pitiable situation. You make them so sorry for what they have done. So let us not just sit back, wring our hands in the air. Go ahead and sue. NBA can provide institutional support, but we need to sue. And this is very, very important. And my last point on this is simply that lawyers need to employ a bit of what I call native intelligence. There are instances where you find a police officer or an army officer, for instance, who is drunk. You need to be careful. There's a better way you can handle it. Try to get the particulars of these officers and write to their, to those in charge of their formation. And if they will not listen, go upstairs. There's no reason why you go to a police station, for instance, and the DPO there would ask you, go back to customs. Don't go there and make another report. Send in a written report, and if you will not be attended to, appeal to a higher authority and quote the fact that you had made an earlier report and nothing was done. But we need to stand up, be firm on this, and insist that the proper thing be done. I don't agree that Thompson ought to have, given up his seat that they know. Claudel Colvin, for instance, the history maker, that woman in the US, refused to give up her seat, and that's how she made history. So he was right to insist that he will be treated with dignity. So Thompson, you have a date with history. Forgive yourself and move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. Now, we will try to address the questions. A number of the questions were directed at DCP Low, so he has noted them, and he will run through the questions and his responses.
Thank you, the moderator. The questions are are interwoven in a way. But I will start with the first one, that is from the lawyer from Aba branch, who was expressing his dismay on the lack of cooperation between OC legals and police stations or police office in their state. First, one thing we have to understand is that once we know our roles as lawyers and as police officers, I don't think there will be any conflict. Most lawyers, when they go to police stations, first of all, they will try to demean the force, or they will demean the officer before whom they went. So this will first of all put the officer on the guard. That is why in most cases, when lawyers go to police stations, they don't receive the necessary cooperation. But we thank the NBA for what they have done. This NBA Security Agencies Committee that was set up, we bridge that gap because there's a wide gap between police and lawyers. So with constant interactions that have been initiated by NBA, I think in the near future, that conflict between lawyers and policemen will be a thing of the past. But still, we have to conduct ourselves properly. Because if we conduct ourselves properly, I don't think we'll have any problem. So many officers and so many lawyers go to police station and their problems are solved. Why? Because they conduct themselves properly. So that is one. So those lawyers who go to OC legals of commands and do not receive cooperation, I think if they conduct themselves properly, you know, they are colleagues. So if they conduct themselves properly, I don't think there will be that problem. I've come across so many lawyers have been contacting me, and we have you know, solved most of their problems. So it's a matter of approach. When you approach the officer properly, your problem will be solved because he is a human being like you. Then the other question of the type of training that can cope all the excesses of policemen. First of all, the environment where these officers are trained, not just only police, has to be conducive. And who is going to make the environment conducive? Is the government. Because government, the responsibility of security is that of the government. So when you need to go to some of these training institutions and see the environment in which these officers are trained. It affects their psychology. And even when they come out, it's the same because the condition of service with respect to, you know, in the environment in which they work, even the remuneration, and so many things, you know. So that also affects. And so, but there are new curriculum now have been designed and to at least reduce all those excesses, like the human rights aspect that have been built in the curriculum as provided in Section 5 of the Police Act. So policemen now are taught human rights from training institutions so that they will know in the performance of their duty, their responsibility when it comes to the protection of human rights. And there's also this question of, whether the police can reform itself. Yes, the police can reform itself to a certain extent. When you talk of reformation, it's holistic. It starts from the training, then from where you work, and then how you work. So it's not just an issue of you know, providing just the necessary. You know, the authorities may provide all the curriculum and the training, but if the condition of service is not good enough, it will still not reform the force. We also have this question which says, can NBA stop police brutality? As I said earlier, NBA can stop police brutality. if they stand firm, because it's the responsibility of MBA as the light and hope of the common man, because lawyers are the hope of common men. All the fight that is to be carried out is by lawyers. So if MBA as a body, or lawyers generally, stand firm in the defense of brutality and ensuring that there is accountability from all these agencies, I don't think we'll have cases of brutality. So MBA has a very big role to play. So many cases have happened. I've not had any voice. Judges were raided, some arrested, charged to court on flimsy charges. There was no action. There was no serious condemnation from MBA. So that is why when the executive saw that, okay, if the MBA, who are affected, who are victims, are not saying anything, they feel there's no problem. That's why you see it continues down to when Justice Odili was affected. But had it been NBA came out with a strong voice and condemn it and take action, I don't think that would have continued. So NBA has a role to play. Not just only having the interaction between security agencies and the members of the NBA, but they must be seen to take action. Then we have this question. Okay, what method of law? Okay, can police change their method of law enforcement? Can police change their method of law enforcement? That is exerting force in order to compare compliance. You see, all this boils down to training. You don't necessarily need to force anybody in order to get facts from him. And that is why the new curriculum now is that of human rights. All policemen are trained that you don't just force anybody to give statement. And before you take statement from anybody, his lawyer or a member of the legal aid must be present. So all these things are built into the new curriculum. So, in the near future, you discover that we'll have a civil and a civil force and that is amenable to change. Then why are councils always parading police stations? The police, that is lawyers and police, are partners in progress. So there's no way council will not parade police station because they are there to protect the rights of their clients. So people must report cases, and then lawyers must always go to police station because most of these complaints are written by lawyers. So there's no way lawyers will not go to police station. Clients who are detained, who are arrested, in so many ways, they have to call their lawyers to come to their aid. So lawyers must certainly parade police station. So I don't think there is an issue. It's not even an issue that lawyers must. It is mandatory that they must be there, because you see, we even have now a scheme that is this human rights desk and duty solicitor scheme. It is manned by lawyers and in different police stations, and the purpose is to ensure that the rights of detainees are protected. And one last issue which I got is the issue of filing suit against the police. And not just 1 minute. We have in the Police Act, Section 131 has established the public complaint unit. So most victims, they are not patronizing, or they are not, channeling their complaint to that unit. That unit is purposely to take care of the problems or complaints against police officers, against police brutality. One, it is cost effective in the sense that you are not charged anything, and the officers will investigate the case and then deal with the alien officers instead of even going to court. Because going to court, if you go by way of fundamental rights, one is time consuming and not cost effective because you are going to exert finances. But if the public complaint unit established by Section 131 of the Police Act is properly used by members of the public, I don't think the issue of filing suit and counter suit, I think it will not arise.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to have Madam Chioma address the question posed by the lady as to the recourse when you are assaulted by an immigration officer, you go to the police station and you are told, oh, sorry, we can't handle it here.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Moderator. I'll respond to that question, and the second one you also asked, where you disagreed with my third point, right? But let me first take a bite at the question asked around training and retraining of officers. And in answering that, I do not think that training and retraining is an isolated suggestion. So it is a suggestion that will work in concert with other necessary reforms, of course. So when you train a hungry man, no matter how trained he or she becomes, the chances that the frustrations of hunger may still drive him or her to, despicable actions is rife. So, of course, training is suggested amongst other things.